We have explored less of Earth's ocean floor than we have mapped the surface of the Moon. That sentence sounds like a rhetorical exaggeration. It is not. Despite the fact that the ocean covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, the deep seafloor remains the least surveyed terrain in the known solar system. Not because we lack curiosity, but because the physics of pressure, darkness, and near-freezing temperatures make every meter of descent vastly more expensive than pointing instruments at the sky. The reason matters because what that neglect has allowed to exist is extraordinary. Cut off from sunlight, from surface chemistry, from every ecological pressure that shaped the animals we recognize, evolution in the deep ocean ran its own experiment for hundreds of millions of years. The results do not look like life as we understand it. They look like drafts from a biology that was never meant to be discovered. 13 of those drafts are waiting in this episode. A crustacean the size of a serving tray that can go 5 years without a single meal. A squid whose tentacles bend at right angles to its body, captured on video fewer than 12 times in recorded history. A crab with a leg span approaching 4 meters. A jawless, boneless creature whose lineage stretches back 300 million years. A shark that launches its jaws forward like a ballistic mechanism. A fish that delivers electric shocks from beneath the sand. Another fish whose teeth are so oversized that its skull required dedicated pockets to store them. A territorial predator whose mouth opens into a bioluminescent shield. A 3-meter ambush worm. An electric sawfish. A small mollusk that hunts the Portuguese man-of-war and absorbs its venom to become deadlier than its prey. And a phantom jellyfish whose arms reach 10 meters, documented on fewer than 110 occasions in over a century of deep-sea observation. None of this requires fiction. It only requires depth, the kind we have barely started to reach. Number 13 on our list walks on water pressure, not metaphorically, literally. Scotoplanes globosa, the deep-sea pig, has no conventional muscle system driving its legs. Instead, its body is filled with seawater, and it moves by hydraulically redistributing that internal pressure through dozens of tube feet on its underside. Every step is a controlled pump. It sounds like science fiction, but this is one of the most successful strategies for surviving the abyss. The deep-sea pig is a holothurian, a sea cucumber, and a echinoderm, living at depths between 1,000 and 6,000 meters, where water pressure exceeds atmospheric pressure by hundreds of times, and temperatures hover near 2 degrees Celsius. It is pink, semi-transparent, roughly the size of a small hand, and at first glance looks more like a bath toy than a functioning animal. That mismatch between appearance and reality is part of what makes it remarkable. Science first encountered scotoplanes during the HMS Challenger expedition of 1872 to 1876, the first systematic deep ocean survey ever conducted. When researchers pulled the initial specimens from abyssal samples, many struggled to accept that what they were looking at was an actual living organism, rather than something distorted by pressure and darkness during retrieval. Today, we know these animals are not rare outliers of the deep. They gather in groups of dozens, sometimes hundreds, all moving in the same direction, against the bottom current, tracking the slow drift of organic detritus sinking from above. They vacuum the sediment, extract nutrients, and process the mud in bulk. For an animal this small, their ecological role in recycling the ocean floor's organic material is disproportionately large. The abyss depends on them far more than it appears. Coming up next, a creature that can go 5 years without a single meal. An animal can survive without food for 5 years, not in dormancy, not frozen, not in any suspended state, simply alive, active when needed, waiting. That is not a figure of speech. That is a documented laboratory fact about venomous giganteus, the giant isopod, number 12 on this list. The reason lies in one of the most radical metabolic systems the deep ocean has ever produced. This crustacean, which can reach 50 centimeters in length and weigh up to 1.5 kilograms, inhabits depths between 170 and 2,000 meters, a world of crushing pressure, perpetual darkness, and near-freezing temperatures. Food does not arrive on a schedule down there. Whale carcasses, dead fish, sinking squid. Meals are rare, unpredictable, and enormous when they come. So the giant isopod evolved an answer that seems almost impossible by the standards of surface biology. It stores energy with extraordinary efficiency, slows its internal processes to a minimum between feedings, and when prey finally arrives, consumes it with an intensity so extreme that the animal sometimes becomes too heavy to move. To look at it is to understand immediately why this creature unsettles people. Take the common woodlouse found under garden stones, scale it up 50 times, add a reflective compound eye on each side of a segmented armoured body, and place 7 pairs of grasping legs beneath it. Alphonse Milne Edwards, the French zoologist who formally described the species in 1879 from specimens collected in the Gulf of Mexico, was working at a time when deep-sea biology was barely a science. What he found was an animal whose basic body plan had already been ancient for hundreds of millions of years. Isopod relatives appear in the Paleozoic fossil record, making this one of the oldest continuous lineages among living crustaceans. Evolution looked at this design and, across geological time, saw no reason to change it. The giant isopod poses no threat to humans. Its scientific significance, however, is difficult to overstate. It is a living demonstration of how far physiology can be pushed toward absolute resource economy. Where the giant isopod impresses through endurance and scale, the next creature on this list achieves something different: lethality and precision compressed into 3 centimeters. The most venomous sting you can receive from this animal is worse than the sting of the creature it just ate. That is not a paradox. It is the core biology of number 11 on our list. Glaucus atlanticus, the blue dragon sea slug. To understand how that is possible, you have to look at what this animal actually does with its food. The blue dragon is a nudibranch, a shellless mollusk roughly 3 centimeters long, and it feeds on Portuguese man-o'-war, siphonophores whose tentacles carry some of the most potent venom in the surface ocean. When the blue dragon consumes a man-o'-war, it does not neutralize the stinging cells, the nematocysts, it sequesters them. Intact and still functional, those cells are transported to specialized sacs at the tips of the dragon's lateral appendages called serrata, where the venom accumulates and concentrates. Current scientific understanding suggests that the resulting dose stored in the dragon's body can exceed the original potency of the man-o'-war itself. A person who picks one up bare-handed, mistaking it for a harmless curiosity washed ashore, may find that out the hard way. The animal itself is built around a different kind of ingenuity. It floats upside down on the ocean's surface, suspended by a single bubble of air swallowed and locked inside its stomach. Its belly faces upward toward the sky, and that side is a saturated silver blue, camouflage that matches the sky's color when viewed from below by a rising predator. Its dorsal side, facing down into the water, is grey and nearly transparent, invisible from above against the deep ocean background. 2 independent camouflage systems, opposite in direction, operating simultaneously on a body smaller than a fingernail. It does not pursue prey. It drifts, carried by the same winds and currents that move the man-o'-war through the same surface film. Both animals are captives of that thin boundary between air and water, equally exposed to storm and tide. On that same surface, but at a scale that makes the blue dragon look like a footnote, our next entry has been accumulating time in a way that borders on geological. A creature the size of a small car, built like a spider, lives at the bottom of the ocean, and it can outlive most humans. That is not a premise from science fiction. That is Macrochera kempferi, The Japanese spider crab, ranked 10th on this list, and arguably the single most visually destabilizing animal in the marine world. The numbers demand to be stated plainly. The leg span of this species reaches nearly 4 meters from tip to tip. Body weight can exceed 20 kilograms. Yet the carapace, the shell at the center of that enormous spread of limbs, measures only about 40 centimeters across. The result is an animal that looks structurally wrong, like something assembled from mismatched parts. A fist-sized core suspended at the intersection of 10 jointed legs that radiate outward like the spokes of a biological wheel. The name spider crab is not metaphor. It is the only accurate description available. Why does it grow so large? Gigantism in deep-sea arthropods is shaped by cold water temperatures, high pressure, slow metabolism, and the absence of many surface predators, conditions that also explain the longevity. Scientific estimates put the lifespan of this species at up to 100 years, a figure that has no parallel among arthropods. Males are distinguishable from females by the length of their chelipeds. In males, those front claws extend considerably further, and that difference serves as the primary visual marker of sex. The crab lives primarily in Pacific waters off Japan, between 150 and 300 meters deep. During spawning season, it rises towards shallower zones. That seasonal movement has made it accessible to Japanese fishermen for centuries, and today, commercial fishing pressure is significant enough that catches are restricted in certain areas during the breeding period. Despite every instinct the animal's silhouette provokes, it is not aggressive. It feeds on dead organic matter and shellfish on the seafloor, moving with a deliberateness that borders on indifference. What comes next on this list proves that the logic of danger does not scale with size. The animal ranked 9th measures barely 3 centimeters. It requires no 4-meter reach to be lethal. Number 9 on our list has survived every mass extinction in the history of this planet, and it did so without evolving a jaw, a backbone, or a single scale. The hagfish, Myxine, has been here for over 300 million years, and it looks exactly like something that has no interest in impressing anyone. Pinkish grey, elongated, boneless, jawless, it resembles less a fish than a rough sketch of one, something abandoned midway through development. That impression is completely wrong. The hagfish's primary defense mechanism is slime, but not slime in any ordinary sense. The moment it detects a threat, it fires hundreds of microscopic protein threads from glands running along its sides. Those threads hit seawater and instantly expand into a dense, elastic, suffocating mass. A single hagfish can produce enough of this substance to fill a large bucket within seconds. Predators don't get bitten or stung, they drown. The slime floods their gills, locks their muscles, and turns the act of attacking into a death sentence. There is no venom, no armor, no speed, just chemistry, deployed with ruthless precision. Once the threat is neutralized, the hagfish faces an obvious problem. It is now coated in its own defense system. Its solution is mechanical and almost absurd. It ties its body into a literal knot, then slides that knot from head to tail, scraping the slime clean off itself. Efficient, unsentimental, entirely in keeping with an animal that has been solving problems this way since before the dinosaurs existed. Hagfish feed primarily on carrion. When a whale or large fish sinks to the ocean floor, hagfish don't simply eat around the carcass. They burrow inside it and consume it from within, sometimes living there for extended periods while the body is gradually hollowed out. To process that much organic material, they have developed a secondary nutrient absorption pathway. They can feed directly through their skin, bypassing the digestive tract entirely. This is vanishingly rare among vertebrates and their closest relatives. That combination of roles, decay processor, nutrient recycler, ecological janitor of the deep, makes the hagfish functionally irreplaceable in deep-sea ecosystems, regardless of how alien it appears. The next creature on our list also operates in the deep, but it has chosen a completely different approach. Rather than becoming invisible in the dark, it strikes from it. The goblin shark looks like it shouldn't be alive. Its skin is so pale and thin that blood vessels show through from beneath, giving it the appearance of something caught between life and anatomy. Yet Mitsukarina austini has been doing exactly this for roughly 125 million years, surviving mass extinctions, outlasting entire branches of the evolutionary tree, arriving in the present almost unchanged. It ranks number 8 on our deep ocean countdown, and it earns that place not through size, but through strangeness. The explanation for its ghostly complexion is biological, not supernatural. At depths between 200 and 1,300 meters, sunlight is entirely absent. The goblin shark navigates this void using thousands of electroreceptors packed into its long, flattened rostrum, the blade-like snout that juts forward like a trowel. These receptors detect the faint bioelectric fields that all living organisms generate, turning darkness into a kind of sensory map. But the rostrum is only half the story. The real reason this animal is extraordinary is what happens when it strikes. The jaws, normally hidden beneath the snout and barely visible, launch forward during an attack, with a range and speed unmatched among all known sharks, projecting up to a third of the head length beyond the animal's profile in a motion that resembles a slingshot firing. The mechanism is called jaw protrusion, and it leaves prey no time to escape. Science first documented the species in 1898 after a specimen was caught off Japan. It was named after American ichthyologist David Starr Jordan and Japanese collector Alan Ostin. Most individuals studied since then have been accidental catches, hauled up in deep-sea fishing nets, far from any observation. Living goblin sharks filmed in their natural habitat represent some of the rarest wildlife footage on Earth. One of the most significant recordings was made in Tokyo Bay in 2001. A lineage that old, a trap that fast, a body that barely changed. That is goblin shark number 8. The creature that follows also conceals itself, but beneath sand rather than water, and it strikes from below. A fish that shocks you, poisons you, and was invisible the entire time. That is not a horror movie premise. That is Uranoscopus, the stargazer, ranked 7th on this list. The name describes the posture perfectly. Eyes fixed upward, aimed at the sky. The reason they face that direction is that everything else is buried. The stargazer submerges itself completely in sand or silt in the shallow coastal waters of the Mediterranean, Black, Indian, and Pacific Oceans, leaving only those upward-staring eyes and the rim of its mouth exposed at the surface. A swimmer passes directly overhead and sees nothing but the seafloor. What makes this camouflage lethal rather than merely impressive is what happens next. Inside the mouth hangs a fleshy red filament, worm-shaped, which the fish manipulates to mimic struggling prey. Small fish and crustaceans move in to investigate, and the stargazer strikes in milliseconds, jaws snapping open, suction pulling the target in whole before any evasion is possible. That alone would be enough for a respectable ranking. But the stargazer layers its defenses. It is among the very few bony fish known to possess an electric organ, capable of generating discharges up to 50 volts. The extraordinary detail is where that organ comes from: modified eye muscles, an evolutionary innovation so unusual it has almost no parallel across the entire vertebrate tree. The electric discharge stuns prey and almost certainly deters predators. Then, if direct contact occurs anyway, venomous spines on the gill covers deliver the third layer of defense. Fishermen pulling stargazers up in nets have learned this the painful way, often before they understood what they were handling. Buried, electric, venomous, and functionally invisible. Number 7 earns its place. Number 8 lives where there is no sand to hide in, only absolute darkness, and it has evolved something far more unsettling. A fish barely 6 inches long has the largest teeth of any vertebrate on Earth relative to body size. Not the largest in absolute terms, a great white wins that contest easily, but the most disproportionate, the most structurally committed to the act of biting. That fish is a Noplogaster cornuta, the fangtooth, and it ranks 6th on this list precisely because nothing about it makes comfortable sense at first glance. The reason those teeth are so extreme comes down to arithmetic. In the deep ocean, meals are rare. A Noplogaster cornuta lives between 200 and 5,000 meters down, in the meso- and bathypelagic zones of every tropical and subtropical ocean on the planet. At those depths, bioluminescence is the only light. Pressure is measured in hundreds of atmospheres, and another living creature crossing your path is not a daily event. When it happens, you cannot afford to miss. So the fangtooth evolved fangs that do not miss. Lower canines so long they cannot be contained within a closed mouth by conventional anatomy. Evolution's solution to that structural problem is worth pausing on. The fangtooth skull contains dedicated sockets, literal sheaths carved into the bone, into which the lower teeth retract completely when the jaw closes. Without those sheaths, the fish would impale its own brain with every bite. Anatomical studies have confirmed this architecture in detail. It is not a workaround. It is a precision-engineered system that has been refined over millions of years in total darkness. Juvenile fangtooths look nothing like their parents. They are pale, spiny-headed, and so visually distinct that taxonomists once classified them as a separate species entirely. Adults are nearly black, with a skull that seems too large for the body behind it, and eyes that register as blank, the deep sea's version of a face designed exclusively to frighten. The effect is less like a real animal and more like someone's literal interpretation of the word predator. No direct threat to humans exists here. The fangtooth lives too deep and grows too small. What it offers instead is a case study in what hunger and darkness produce when given enough time. Solutions that look like exaggeration but function with absolute precision. The creature ranked 5th also built its reputation around its mouth, but it hunts in sunlit shallows where everyone can see exactly what it is capable of. Number 5 on our list is a fish that can barely fill your hand, and yet has driven scuba divers away from their own equipment. The sarcastic fringehead, Neoclinus blanchardi, holds what may be the most disproportionate threat display in the vertebrate world. When it opens its mouth to defend territory, the jaw doesn't simply gape. It unfolds into a disc-shaped structure that can exceed 180 degrees, revealing tissue in fluorescent yellow, green, and electric blue, with a diameter many times larger than the fish's head appears in its resting state. The animal looks, for a moment, like it has turned itself inside out. The reason this is even physically possible comes down to 2 adaptations working together. The ligaments connecting the jaw elements are unusually extensible, and the hyoid apparatus, the bony framework beneath the tongue, has been modified in a way that allows the entire oral structure to fan outward rather than simply drop. The result is not just a wide-open mouth, but a transformed geometry. Neoclinus blanchardi lives along the Pacific coast from Alaska to Baja California, occupying crevices in rocks, empty shells, and discarded debris at depths ranging from a few meters down to 30. It grows between 20 and 38 centimeters and wears a drab brownish-grey that makes it essentially invisible until provoked. The feathery cirri above its eyes give it the name fringehead. Everything about its appearance suggests obscurity. Biologists have recorded individuals lunging at divers and biting into wetsuit material to defend a hole no larger than a fist. Between males, the confrontations are stranger still. 2 fish face each other, open their mouths in synchrony, and press the expanded discs together, a contest of surface area and color saturation that rarely escalates to actual biting. The larger, more vividly coloured display wins. The fight is decided before it begins. Our next entry also holds a record tied to its teeth, but where the sarcastic fringehead wins through spectacle, the longhorn cowfish made its weapons a permanent feature of its own skull. The sawfish has spent 100 million years perfecting a tool that is now killing it. That is not a rhetorical device. It is the precise summary of what Prehistoric face today. Fossil rostral teeth, chemically identical to those of living specimens, date to the Cretaceous period, an era when non-avian dinosaurs still moved across land. Evolution spent roughly 100 million years leaving this animal almost entirely alone, which in biological terms means one thing: the design was already optimal. The body reaches 7 meters, built along the lines of a shark, but the defining structure is the rostrum, a flat, cartilaginous extension projecting forward for up to a third of the body's total length. Along both its edges run rows of tooth-like denticles, 14 to 24 pairs in large adults. These are not teeth in a strict anatomical sense. They are modified scales fused into the cartilage, and they do not regenerate. Break one, and the break is permanent. The rostrum operates on 2 principles simultaneously. First, sensation. Its entire surface is studded with ampullae of Lorenzini, electroreceptive pores that detect the faint bioelectric fields produced by any living organism. A sawfish can locate prey buried beneath riverbed silt without seeing it at all. Second, force. A rapid lateral sweep of the rostrum stuns or bisects a fish, which is then gathered from the bottom using the mouth positioned on the underside of the head. For 100 million years, this combination was untouchable. Then came industrial-scale gillnets, and the same rostrum that made the sawfish extraordinary made it catastrophically vulnerable. It catches in netting with no possibility of reversal, and the animal cannot pull free. Populations across all 5 species of Prehistoric have declined by more than 90% in a single century. The red list of the IUCN now classifies every one of them as critically endangered. An animal that outlasted the Cretaceous mass extinction could not outlast the 20th century's fishing fleets. This is number 4 on our list, visually the most immediately recognizable creature here, and yet among the least understood in terms of what it can actually do. The entry that follows offers nothing familiar at first glance. A worm can cut a fish in half. Not gradually, not with repeated effort, in a single snap, faster than a high-speed camera can cleanly resolve. That is the opening fact about number 3 on this list. Eunice aphroditoa, the bobbit worm, a polychaete that reaches 3 meters in length and has spent millions of years engineering one of the ocean's most effective ambush systems. The reason this works comes down to architecture. Almost the entire body is buried vertically beneath the seafloor: coral rubble, sand, reef crevices, leaving only 5 sensory antennae exposed above the surface. Those antennae explain everything. They register water pressure shifts, mechanical vibration, chemical traces. The worm does not chase, it does not patrol. It processes incoming data and waits, sometimes for decades, because individual specimens are known to live that long, growing incrementally throughout their lifespan. When a fish, octopus or crustacean crosses the threshold distance, the strike is essentially instantaneous. The chitinous jaws deliver a bite powerful enough to bisect prey cleanly, while simultaneously injecting a paralytic secretion. The target is pulled under the substrate before any escape response can activate. The geometry of the attack is what makes defense nearly impossible. The worm's body offers no surface area to counterattack. The blow arrives from directly below, and the entire sequence is over in milliseconds. The creature's appearance adds a layer of improbability to all of this. Its body shimmers with iridescent color, violet, gold, metallic green, produced by microscopic surface structures that diffract light. This is why taxonomists assigned it the epithet Aphroditus, after Aphrodite. It is, by any measure, a beautiful animal. That beauty has also made it a recurring problem in marine aquariums worldwide, where specimens have gone undetected for years inside live rock, emerging at night to take fish, discovered only when the tank's population begins to quietly disappear. Eunice aphrodite ranges across the Indo-Pacific, from Australian waters into the Caribbean. Its method is the underground ambush, perfected and invisible. The next entry on this list hides in a completely different way, in plain sight. We have filmed it fewer than 12 times in all of recorded history, and yet it exists, right now, somewhere below you. Number 2 on our list is the big fin squid, Magna pinna, and the reason most people have never heard of it is not that it is rare in the way tigers are rare. It is rare in the way that entire dimensions of the deep ocean are rare, structurally inaccessible, methodically hidden by pressure and darkness. The species was not formally described until 1998. The first confirmed video came 3 years later, in 2001, shot by accident by an oil industry ROV operating at roughly 2,400 meters in the Gulf of Mexico. The engineers were inspecting pipeline infrastructure. What appeared on their monitor was something else entirely. The silhouette is immediately wrong in a way that is hard to articulate. The fins are wide and heart-shaped, broader than the mantle itself, giving the animal the outline of a gliding bat, but the tentacles are the detail that stays with you. They extend downward, then pivot sharply, precisely 90 degrees, and hang vertically, motionless, like the legs of a spider frozen mid-air. Those hanging sections can reach 8 meters in length. The body, by comparison, is small. What is the angle for? The leading hypothesis is that Magna pinna uses its tentacles as a passive trap, holding them still in the dark and waiting for prey to make accidental contact. Every video recording supports this. The animal barely moves. It hovers like a suspended mobile, conserving energy with a discipline that makes sense only when you understand the metabolic economics of the deep. At those depths, chasing food is a losing calculation. You become the ambush. You become the net. What we do not have is almost everything else. No intact adult specimen has ever been brought to the surface. No eggs, no stomach contents, no confirmed maximum size. The ocean has kept this animal almost entirely to itself, and based on the evidence so far, it seems content to continue doing so. An animal the size of a small car has been filmed fewer than 110 times in all of recorded history, and it lives in every ocean on Earth. That is not a gap in the data. That is a statement about how little we understand the deep sea. The creature is Stygiomedusa gigantea, ranked first among the most extraordinary inhabitants of the oceanic abyss, and it has been drifting through the darkness below 1,000 meters for longer than humans have had the technology to look. The bell alone can exceed 1 meter across. Behind it trail 4 oral arms, not tentacles, arms, wide and ribbon-like and rust-coloured, that stretch up to 10 meters in length. In the absolute blackness of the bathypelagic zone, they move like slow curtains, like something between a living thing and a stage set for a play no one is watching. That visual quality is precisely why the species acquired its informal name, the phantom jellyfish. When an ROV camera catches one, the image holds for a few seconds, a translucent dome pulsing with quiet regularity, 4 massive drapes swelling behind it. And then the animal descends back into the black before the operator can follow. Stygiomedusa gigantea was formally described in 1810. More than 2 centuries of marine biology, the entire age of submersible technology and remotely operated vehicles, expeditions across every ocean basin. Fewer than 110 video records total. It has no stinging cells capable of harming a human. It feeds, researchers believe, by drifting passively through the water column and allowing those vast arms to intercept plankton and small animals without any active pursuit. Its depth range runs from roughly 1,000 to 6,000 meters. It is found everywhere except the Arctic. The reason the phantom jellyfish matters is not the spectacle, though the spectacle is real. It matters because of what its rarity implies. An organism of this size, cosmopolitan in distribution, observed barely 100 times, suggests that our estimates of deep-sea biomass and species diversity may be catastrophically wrong. If something this large has slipped past us so consistently, the inventory of what lives below the sunlit ocean is far from complete. Reproduction, lifespan, precise feeding mechanics, none of it has been properly documented. The phantom jellyfish is not just an animal. It is evidence of how much remains unknown. The camera loses it, the screen goes dark, and the question it leaves behind leads directly to the next creature on this list. One that unsettles not through scale or invisibility, but through sheer anatomical strangeness. A squid whose fins are wider than its own mantle, and whose arms hang straight down at right angles, motionless as spider legs in zero gravity. We reached the moon before we mapped the bottom of our own ocean. That's not a metaphor, it's a logistical fact, and it tells you everything about what's still waiting down there. This episode covers 13 organisms, not 13 curiosities, 13 proofs that life doesn't negotiate with conditions we consider impossible. It simply adapts and keeps going. The giant isopod goes 5 years without food, not by slowing down slightly, by shutting almost everything off and waiting. The goblin shark carries a jaw mechanism that fires forward like a loaded spring, a design that's been field-tested for 125 million years, longer than the entire reign of the dinosaurs. The phantom jellyfish has been observed alive fewer than 110 times across the full recorded history of deep-sea dives. Think about that number. Fewer than 110 confirmed sightings in more than a century of looking. We descend through these 13 encounters in sequence, from shallow sand flats where the stargazer buries itself and delivers venom through its dorsal spines, down through the water column to abyssal plains where sea pigs walk across sediment on hydraulic tube feet. Each organism represents a different set of conditions that evolution solved: crushing pressure, total darkness, multi-year starvation, chemical toxicity. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth's surface. Its average depth is nearly 4 kilometers. Detailed human exploration has reached less than 20% of that space. What that means in practice is that this list of 13 is not a summary. It's an opening line. The rest of the book hasn't been written yet because we haven't gone there. If this episode made you think differently about dark water, leave that thought below. The ocean is waiting for the next question.